All right, back at it again, as the cool kid Cody would say. Mike Kuhn on the other side of the microphone, on the other side of the computer, and Thad Bell here from the Blue Testament. How you doing, Mike?
Doing well, doing well. Another day in paradise.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's how I would describe it, but we'll go with that. We'll go with that. I've been in far worse situations, so it's pretty good. All right, biggest news or question mark or discussion point for all day today, I think. Well, since late last night has been the call up of Alan Pulido, Mexico wanting MLS players to go to a friendly in Europe, well, a couple friendlies in Europe, and whether or not MLS would let them, whether FIFA would stop it or FIFA would allow it. What's the latest as you understand it, Mike?
The latest, as I understand it, is that it is going to fall on the teams to have to be the ones to decide if they're going to release their players or not. At least that's one way of understanding the situation. There seem to be multiple different ways and multiple different comprehensions of what's going on because FIFA's rules are still a little muddy, it seems.
I am shocked at that. Um, One of the distinctions was whether or not it was a friendly versus a qualifier or Nations Cup or something, right?
But yeah, originally, yes, but that recommendation also seems to be out the window now from some of the latest stuff. So it the way it seemed to come off is that if countries have a quarantine period of 5 days or more upon return, clubs don't have to release those players. Now, MLS specifically has rules about quarantining
Right.
when players come back in. So, in theory, that would put it on that would put the MLS players out. But apparently, last night after Mexico played a friendly against Guatemala, Mexican's national team coach Tata Martino was saying that he's under the impression that because the state of Kansas does not have a quarantine rule of 5 days, those players are okay to go to Europe. And it's the community rules, not the league rules, which in a sense makes more sense because if you're going to put if FIFA is going to put a rule where if you have to quarantine for 5 days before it when you return, guess what every league in the world that doesn't want their players to go on national team duty is going to do? Put a quarantine in place for any player that returns.
Yeah, it seems like that would be an easy out for everybody. Of course, we already have that in writing for us, right? For MLS. So,
Yeah, it's a weird situation that still doesn't feel clear, and I have a feeling that at least you, as someone that has now a little more knowledge of the situation, will be asking Peter Vermes about tomorrow in the press conference that this may or may not be posted before that happens tomorrow.
it will be posted in video form before that time. I promise it
So
this time.
so then you'll be able to watch this before Peter Vermes' conference tomorrow. So hopefully we'll get a little more information then on to what Kansas City is doing because Alan Pulido on Twitter seemed excited about the idea, and the
Yeah.
way I read it is he was planning on going. He talked about it's always an honor to represent and put on the tricolor, the Mexican national team jersey. So it seems in my mind he's wanting to go.
Well, and in fairness, one of the many reasons that he came here, besides the love of Kansas City barbecue, was to get enough recognition and get back into the big team picture there for him. Um, Question is, everything, all things considered, if Sporting said no, we're not going to let you go, do we now have a very disgruntled $9.5 million paperweight?
Yeah, and that's with the argument of it being on the MLS teams, not the league or the federation to release the players, it becomes an argument of what teams want to piss off their star players that are being called up for games, basically.
Yeah, because the three Mexican players are Pulido, Pizarro, and who's the third one?
Dos Santos, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
Because yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Dos Santos because I don't think Chicharito got the call.
no,
I know it's
no.
one of the LA Mexican internationals and Pizarro.
Pretty sure it was. I'm pretty sure you're right. It's Dos Santos.
Because both Schelotto and I'm blanking on Miami's coach right now. Both of those coaches
Alonso.
both of those coaches had made comments today about the whole situation. So yeah, yeah, I don't know right now. So we'll find out from Vermes tomorrow, hopefully, a little more information.
I should take odds on whether or not Vermes' answer will be, we're still looking into it.
That actually won't surprise me. But the way to look at it is if Sporting actually says anything about it, then you know it's going to happen. To look at that, go back to September with Kinda's call-up. He was called up. The national team put out a tweet and a postings with saying that he was called up. Nothing ever came from Sporting because FIFA had said that teams didn't have to release players, so Sporting did not release Kinda, which, if I remember right, Israel, when they replaced him on the roster, said that he wasn't released due to quarantining rules
Requirements?
or something like that. Yeah, I feel like I remember seeing that. And honestly, I've been kind of keeping an eye on Israel's Twitter and Facebook page, where they seem to be the most active, waiting to see if Kinda gets the call for the next one. Because going back to your friendly argument, Israel doesn't have friendlies this time.
Right.
Israel has Nations League games. So if that rule was still in effect, Sporting couldn't turn down Kinda's call-up.
And the same for the very hot scoring Scotsman. He could be in that same boat too.
Scotland came out with theirs. He was not on their roster.
Okay.
So I did see that. But since he wasn't on it, I didn't make any mention of it.
All right. I was counting on you to at least mention that fact, Mike. I count on you for the news, man, in case you didn't know that by now.
Sorry, I left it out because there was no news. He wasn't called in.
That is news. That is news.
My apologies.
We'll argue about it in the Slack channel later. We don't need to bore everybody with that part. Yeah, but I mean, if he's called up, if the MLS if FIFA requires and MLS can't block it, if Sporting can block it, that leaves Vermes in a tough spot. I really think it does.
No, it absolutely does, because you're either upsetting your highest paid player ever, who just returned from injury, who you will miss for 5-6 games if he does go.
Yeah.
So he's missing 50 to 60% of the remaining season if he remaining regular season if he does go. So I mean, it puts him in the spot of, do I keep him happy and let him go, knowing that we're going to have to pick up the slack a lot for half of our remaining games? Or do I piss him off and have him not playing well and have him playing in a funk because I didn't let him go? It's a no-win situation, unfortunately, and it
is.
It speaks beyond MLS's continued frustrations with playing during the international break, because I understand. I don't love it, but I understand MLS playing through the international break still. As frustrating as it is for me, I understand why they do it, to keep those weekend dates that are the most high-profile, most well-attended games. But at the same time, it's frustrating as hell to lose Johnny Russell, lose Felipe Gutierrez, lose Roger Espinoza, Matt Beasler, Graham Zusi, all those, all in the past, losing them for games at a time when they would get called into national team duty.
And some of them for
But
games that we knew that was really inconsequential because they were either going to easily win it or easily lose it.
yeah, or we knew they weren't going to play, which will piss me off all the more if Pulido goes and doesn't even play at all. That would be the most frustrating thing out of everything.
And then throw in also the added risk of picking up the virus because he's now traveled to, 3 or 4 plane trips, whatever that takes. Different countries who hopefully have very good testing. I mean, we can argue about protocols is where I was going. Yes. We can argue about whether or not we do, but we know Sporting does. So that would just leave a lot of risk there for somebody to go. And I don't blame him for wanting to go because that's your dream. He's dreamed of playing for Mexico, not for Sporting.
Yeah. No, it's I don't blame him at all in that regard. I want him to go. I want him to do well. And going back to your comment about Vermes, letting him go sets a good puts him in a good light for potential other players later down the line. Because if you show yourself as somebody who doesn't want to release players, you're going to struggle to get those players that are regularly getting those call-ups.
Historically, he's actually been pretty good about it. I know they got fined for the one Espinoza one, which was actually a bunch of BS. But
Espinoza, Mustafar, there was a lot of stuff with he retired from Haiti, and then after he left Kansas City, he mysteriously unretired from national team duty. So there are a few instances where I question it a little bit, but for the most part, yes, he does release players for national team duty, and he doesn't work to hold people back. And I'm sure with the Kinda situation, I'm sure the league and Vermes and everybody made everything explicitly clear to all those players in that regard, at least with the September call-ups, because FIFA actually had better protocols in place, I feel, for September than they do now.
And just for clarity's sake, because a lot of people go back to the Espinoza one as one that Sporting held him back. He did have an injured back. He did have a back strain. He sat out of practice for several days. It wasn't like he stayed here and practiced. Flying on a plane for...
Optically, it was not the best that he then came out days after it was... after he rejected the call-up. It was not the best optics.
I understand that. I'm just trying to give the further information that a lot of people don't have. I saw him sitting out of training. So it wasn't like he was training for the full week. I think he came back and trained like 1 or 2 days and then played in a game. But he sat out for several days with back injury. I actually talked to him. He had a back strain. And sitting on a plane for 6 hours flying to wherever they were going, whatever the hours was not going to help that. And because the one game they did play was at home, it wasn't like even another trip. So he was getting regular care and not having to strain it more. And I think even the practice he did do was probably kind of light. But so I just try to clarify that when I get the chance to do that.
So anything else want to talk about on the national team call-ups? We're like I said, we're still waiting to see if Kinda gets a call-up. He's the only other player potentially that could get a call-up, I think, at this point. I don't think we're going to see anybody else get a surprise call-up of any kind.
No, I don't think there's anybody. Ilya is not. Fontas isn't. Reed would be maybe a potential. I haven't even looked for New Zealand.
Yeah, I haven't either, but he'd be even
a long shot.
Well, he'd be a long shot because if they're playing any home games, New Zealand's not letting anybody that's been in the U.S. recently in.
That's true. I did.
Although weren't they playing England? I feel like New Zealand was maybe playing England because
in England.
Yeah. So okay. So I guess technically he could get called up for that game, I guess. But I would have figured that game would have been announced by now, or their roster would have been announced by now.
I know you're subtly going to be looking that up while we're talking.
Well, I am looking it up, and it doesn't look like they have a game. England's playing Wales on the 8th and Belgium on the 11th. They don't play New Zealand until November. November is when the friendly is against New Zealand. So I'm not sure if New Zealand has a game right now.
Probably not. All right,
So
that's good. So lots of uncertainty. We'll hopefully get clarity. I'm not counting on it, but we'll hopefully get clarity. It'll either be
at
yes, he's
least a
going, or we'll
little
hear nothing.
clarity. Yeah, at least a little clarity, because everybody's seen that he's called up. So I would hope Vermes would give us a little bit of clarity of whether he's going or not. I know he doesn't like to tip things off on the roster and stuff, but I would think there'd be enough questions, including from the Hispanic media in town, asking if he was going to get a little more of a response from Peter this time.
So you're saying I probably don't have to pressure him? I can just let everybody else do it?
I don't think you will. Like I said, I have a feeling with him getting the call up, there will be a lot of questions about it.
I can probably save my questions for the transfer window. See if there's anybody coming in.
You know, Peter looks forward to your questions on that.
Yeah, last time I asked, he's like, "I know you always like to ask that, Dad." Like, so I've actually not asked for like 3 weeks or 4 weeks now. Somebody else
So
did.
you're well overdue then for it.
Yeah,
Because we're in the final month of the transfer window.
and there's been rumors, so nothing in the last few days, but what, Juan Pianor was the last rumor.
Yep, and
Him and
there's
Bernardo.
but there's been nothing on that since he was released by Malaga. So nothing further anyway.
Well, but that was just 2 days ago, so I think yesterday or the day before, 2 days ago. Recently.
Days are a construct of the mind at this point.
Yes, it is. I'm not even. I'm just giving you that one, man. I don't have a good reply. I was thinking once school started back up, I would like get some like
semblance
regular
of days back.
Yes, and I was thinking with soccer and all that stuff, and the soccer schedule is so crazy. My daughter's schedule is so crazy. My wife's schedule is so crazy. I'm just kind of like, okay, tonight, do we have something? Who's on what call? Who's home? What are we eating? Should I cook something? Are we doing leftovers? I'm just going. I'm pretty good with going with the flow, but that's pretty much all it is right now. And I know I'm not the only one, so that's not complaining. It's just the way it is. All right. I think one other thing we wanted to at least touch base on real quick was SPR.
Yes.
The team formerly known as Swell Park Rangers, as Mike likes to acronym it.
Yes.
What's the acronym? Quick. Come on.
TFKASPR.
Oh, you're going to drop something else after that F.
Anyway, SKCII has their final game of the season this weekend in Louisville.
Yep.
Picked up another win on Wednesday night in Indianapolis, 2-1, with Wilson Harris scoring goal 8 of the season, and academy contract Bailey Sparks scoring the winner in stoppage time.
And it was a pretty nice goal.
Oh, it was a very nice goal. Actually, both goals were nice. The Fredinho's multiple stepovers and the floated header by Harris on the first goal, and then Sparks' goal was very nice. He looked good in a little bit of. I rewatched the game when I got home last night, and he looked pretty good in the short amount of time he had on the field, considering Indy would have been pushing for a goal.
Yeah, because they really wanted those points. But he was good. He kind of got the full gamut. He got a yellow in his first minute, a goal in his 10th minute, roughly. Got mobbed by his team. He pretty much had a pretty remarkable first game.
Yep. And just the one more left in Louisville, so it'll be. I'd hope he gets a little more time because against Louisville.
I hope so.
on Saturday. I would think that at this point, I mean, we've seen for the last, I guess, 4 games now, we've kind of stuck with the younger lineup. I mean, there's been no Townsend. There's been Riley's been on the bench.
No Rabin.
No Rabin.
No Wapiwo.
I
That
leave
guy.
that one to you. Yep. Duvall.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
Duvall. Let's say that he wasn't on the bench last night. Again, they could be injured, and that's why they're playing. But I hope it's that they're getting those guys experience.
Yeah. I
Caden
mean,
Pierre.
if it was 1 or 2 that were doing it, I would say that. But when it's everybody but Duke, and Cerna, basically, that are that when they're the only 2 older players getting on the field, it comes off more as by design than an injury thing.
There was 3 players out there last night over the age of 21.
Sounds right. Fredinho, Duke, Cerna.
Prior.
Yeah, so 4.
I was actually thinking at the very end of the game, but yeah, 4 through most of it. Caden Pierre looked really good. Jake Davis continues to impress. Wilson Harris still finds a way to score goals. Both the Rads had good and not so good moments. But I'd really like to see J-Rad play more too. I wish he would have gotten a little more time this year, just to see how he developed, because him, Davis, Harris, all have a little bit of edge and bite to them when they need to. But for guys that are that young and that getting experience is just bodes really well.
Definitely. No, I mean, we talked about it earlier this week. I'm excited about the future, seeing what continuing to see those kids develop and continue to play well. Yeah, so yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I would have loved to have seen what this team could have done if they would have played a few more games at home this year. Considering the way they played, they very well could have and would have been fighting for a playoff spot still at this point. Instead, we get to play spoiler and keep St. Louis alive.
Yeah, they should be sending us thank yous instead of the little snark they tried to do last week. I forgot that was.
Don't want them to send Emo's Pizza or baked ravioli or something.
Oh, I'll take emos, man. I do like emos. I know a lot of
For
people
all
around
the
here
crap,
don't.
I love emos, so
Yeah.
I will never badmouth emos, and I know and if anybody wants to say anything, I don't read comments.
And when he does, he doesn't really give a shit. Hey, again, I admit I'm from St. Louis. I like Emo's Pizza. Okay, I root for St. Louis baseball, hockey, pizza, Kansas City barbecue, Kansas City soccer. I have no qualms. Doesn't bother me a bit. So
I think it's overblown. Of anything else, I'm looking forward to having a team I don't have to technically spend an overnight at to go watch sporting play. So I don't love St. Louis. I don't hate St. Louis as much as some people do, but I'm looking forward to hopping on an Amtrak in downtown Lee Summit, taking it all the way down to the stadium, and then either finding a hotel or hopping on a train back to Lee Summit and going home at the end of the day. So either way, I'm just loving the idea of not having to potentially spend a night in a city if I don't want to for a sporting game.
any final words, Mike?
Nothing this week. Looking forward to the sporting game.
Have a good night, and we will get out of here.
Yep. Have a good night.